So here's the first evaluation exercise for today, and in this position it's black's turn to move. Use your 5-step evaluation thinking method and then say, who do you think has an advantage here? You can pause the video to do that. Now before we continue, I just want to say that when I give my solutions, I will only focus on the main points that you should have noticed. In other words, I'm not going to go through the detail of each and every step, because I want to keep these videos short and to the point. However, when you do the exercises, you must do it as thoroughly as possible. Because if you want to improve your thinking methods, then you have to practice your mind thinking in that way. And the only way to do that is through these exercises, where you force your mind to think about all of the evaluation aspects. Okay, so that said, in this position, the biggest difference is to see that black has a material advantage to the value of 2 points. He's got a knight for a pawn. He also has a slight advantage in terms of king safety, because he's already castled, and also in terms of piece development, that's also a consequence of the fact that he's already castled. So this rook is already developed and that rook isn't. Maybe white's best piece is his queen, because the queen is already well developed in comparison to the black queen that's not developed yet, but that's not really a valid point, because black can always just exchange the queens on the next move if he wants. Okay, so now I'm going to suggest 2 moves for black here, and you must say which one you think is better. Since white is threatening to capture our bishop, I'm going to suggest the move bishop to g7, putting pressure on the d4 pawn, or the queen exchange. Which one do you think is better? Pause the video to think about it. Okay, so when you compare moves, when I give you these exercises where you have to compare 2 moves, you should think of it in terms of the evaluation criteria. In other words, ask yourself, how does the move affect material? How does it affect king safety? How does it affect piece development? How does it affect center control? And how does it affect the pawn structure? So let's look at these 2 moves with that in mind. This move, it doesn't affect the material. It doesn't affect king safety. It doesn't really affect piece development either, because the bishop is perfectly good on either of these squares. It doesn't affect center control much, and it also doesn't affect pawn structure. So we can say this move, it answers to white's threat. It moves the bishop back to safety, but it doesn't do much more. So let's look at the other move, the queen exchange. Okay, so let's ask ourselves, how does it affect the material? Well, it's an equal exchange, so material is not affected. How does it affect king safety? Well, it doesn't really affect king safety. How does it affect piece development? You can say that black scores a little bit in this regard, because he exchanged an undeveloped queen for a developed queen. How does it affect the center control? It doesn't affect it. And how does it affect the pawn structure? Well, here we maybe see the biggest difference, because now white's pawn structure is really broken up now. So for that reason, the move queen takes queen, exchanging the queens, makes more sense, because by that move black improves his position more. Another important point here is, because black is ahead in material, it's a good idea to exchange material. Now this is an important strategy to understand. When you have extra material, you want to exchange the remaining pieces, because you want to reach an endgame. And in the endgame position, there's more opportunities to use your extra material to your benefit. That's why it's a good idea to exchange into an endgame if you are leading in material. Okay, so let's move on to the second exercise. In this position, it's white's turn to move. Who do you think has an advantage here? Use your thinking method, your evaluation thinking method, and then say who you think has an advantage here. You can pause the video to think about it. Okay, so the important thing you should have noticed here is that white's pieces are better developed and black's pawn structure is better. But in the opening and the middle game, piece development is more important than pawn structure. In the end game again, pawn structure becomes very important. But to illustrate my point, you see, even though white's pawns are weak and isolated, it gives him an advantage also. You can see these open files leading towards the black king, and this open files for the bishop. So even though white's pawn structure isn't very strong, his pieces are very active. Black, on the other hand, although his pawn structure is quite strong, his pieces are very underdeveloped. Specifically, if you look at the rook and the bishop, the rook and the knight here in the corner, the rook is stuck and the knight can't move because of the way the pawns are and the queen is. So black really has a problem here with piece development. And from that point of view, we can say that it seems that white has some advantage here. Okay, so now I'm going to suggest two moves in this position. Since black is threatened to capture our bishop, I'm going to suggest the move bishop takes e8, doing an exchange, or bringing the bishop back to f3. Which one do you think is better? Pause the video to think about it. Okay, so when you consider an exchange, you should always ask yourself which piece is the more valuable in this position. And you can also ask yourself, is my piece the attacker or is it the defender? Because if your piece is the attacker, then he is generally better. The reason why an attacking piece is better is because it's easy for him to change his role. You can decide to go attack something else. A defender, on the other hand, is stuck. He has to keep on defending a certain target in his position. So that said, this bishop is an attacking piece and this bishop is a defending piece. Ideally, you don't want to exchange an attacking piece for a defending piece because you just help to release the pressure on your opponent. So we can say that in terms of material it will be equal, but in terms of piece development, white will give up something because he will take a very well developed piece and exchange it for a poorly developed piece. So from a development point of view, this move doesn't make much sense. And this move makes more sense because it keeps the pressure on black, adding pressure on the b7 pawn. Okay, so that's the evaluation exercises for today, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.